My name is Jeff Duncan. Like Roger said, we're cousins. I haven't shared my testimony since I got saved 13 years ago. This Tuesday will be my spiritual birthday, December 3rd. And so I thought this was really great timing. Roger let me pick the day that I would come and share my testimony, and that just sounded good to me because it's 2 days before my real birthday. Like I said, I got saved 13 years ago, and ever since then, I have not made a mistake. I've been perfect. And if you believe that, I've got some beachfront property in Newcastle, Oklahoma. So I'd like to start with reading just a couple of things that I heard on the day that I went to a church to hear somebody tell their testimony. And I had no intention of going to church to be saved or to, all I wanted was an autograph. I mean, I'll get to that. But one of the things he said was, don't let blessings become a burden. When the Lord is showering you with blessings and they're falling at your feet, don't stop to pick them up, because when you do, He'll take your eyes off the cross. And I'm sorry, I get kind of emotional. Well, the person that I went to go see, do any of you in here follow OU football? You don't?
No.
Well, back in 1999, Bob Stoops came here to be a coach, and we had gone through, as OU fans, we had gone through 10 years, roughly, of really bad times with terrible coaches. You know, I think we had Howard Schnellingberger, that name just doesn't go along with OU football. And then, you know, we had John Blake, and he was okay, but he tried, and he was decent, but he wasn't like Bob Stoops. You know, Bob Stoops came in and kind of put everybody where they belong, took a quarterback and put him as a punt returner. He did great. So it was just putting the right people in the right places. They were playing the wrong positions. But along with them, they recruited a quarterback. His name's Josh Heupel, and he's actually the offensive coordinator now at OU. And when I first saw him, being from OU, or being an OU fan for so many years, Roger and I were raised on OU football. I don't think you never went to OU, did you? Took any classes there? I didn't either. And people always ask me, it's odd that you're so passionate about OU, but you never went to school there. And I was like, well, it's just part of our upbringing. Our uncles drilled into us that OU was the only team in Oklahoma. That other team that wears the Halloween colors, they're just there. But, so we were raised like that. And when I first saw Josh Heupel, I saw that they recruited him from some junior college in Aberdeen, South Dakota. My first impression of him was like, who is this guy, and what is he going to do for us? We were used to running the wishbone, and had running quarterbacks. This guy didn't look like he could run his way out of a paper sack, let alone on the field with 300-pound guys chasing him down. And anyway, I started to watch him play, and he was really good. And I was impressed. I was like, man, what is up with this guy? And he'd get tackled by I think Josh at the time weighed like 215, and he'd get tackled by a 350-pound linebacker and just get up smiling. And one time he got up and actually turned towards the camera and winked. And I was like, man, there's something up with this guy. It's like he's got something going on that you can't see, that's not obvious. So Okay, with that being said, I'm gonna backtrack and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my childhood, my upbringing. I grew up in a family of 5. I was the youngest. I was the baby. So I generally, got what I wanted. I wouldn't say I never got in trouble, because I did, but I was always able to escape punishment because my mom and dad always thought my brother had done it. I remember one night we were sitting around outside by the front porch, and my mom and dad had these flower beds lined in brick, and I had a hammer, and we were just sitting out there talking. Just my brother and one of his friends and myself were sitting out there talking. And I was kind of bored with what they were talking about, so I was taking this hammer and tapping on the bricks. Come to find out, I was loosening the mortar. The next morning, my brother and I shared a bunk bed. And he slept on top, I slept on bottom, and the next morning I was awakened by my dad coming in there. He was angry. And he said, "Who broke the bricks on the flower bed?" And I just stayed there like I was asleep. It wasn't me, huh? And my brother ended up taking the punishment for it, and I never said anything. So I used to get away with stuff. Roger and I, we grew up together. He's got an older brother, Gary Paul, and my brother. I'm the youngest one of the bunch. We used to hang out all the time. We used to spend the night when we were younger. That'd be the big deal on Friday nights. One of us, or 2 of us, would go to the other's house, and we'd watch Dukes of Hazzard. And at our house, we had TV dinners. And, we'd play these games late at night, Ghosts and Goblins. You remember that? Somebody would come in with a pillowcase over their head, and the other 3 would be hiding in the room somewhere, and we'd you try to find the person with the pillowcase was the ghost, I guess. And the other 3 were the goblins, so they go to hitting you. And you try to find these people. Anyway, just things like that. And then as we got older, we'd hang around and just go cruising, we used to call it in El Reno, go cruising up and down Sunset. And so and Roger was my best friend up until junior high sometime, when he informed me that we were cousins and we couldn't be best friends. And I was torn. But we grew up, our families were really close. Our families were really close. We all went to the same church. We were in a Catholic church. And I'm not here to bash Catholics. My mom and dad are still Catholic. But as a kid, growing up in the Catholic church, I didn't have a clue what was going on. It was very ritualistic to me. And in fact, on the way up here, I was talking to my wife, and just talking about some of the different things. She asked me about confession. And I told her, you'd go into a booth, and there was a kind of a screen. You could see the person on the other side. You could see a silhouette that you weren't supposed to know who it was. Of course, it was the priest. Everybody knows. It's the priest. And you tell him your confessions. And I told Amy I'd always leave stuff out. He's human. He's not going to know I'm lying. So I'd tell him, I got mad. I got mad at somebody. I stole something. But I wouldn't tell him the good stuff, the juicy stuff. That was mine to keep. So, I just had a lot of questions growing up. I didn't understand church. I remember, does anybody in here have kids? Y'all are kind of young to have kids. I know you 2 do. They're grown. But we have a unique situation where my oldest son is 21 from a previous marriage. So he's grown. And he lived with Amy and I during his teenage years, and that was exciting. There's lots of stuff going on. But now we have a 2-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy, and they ask a lot of questions. And some of the questions you do your best to answer, but you just don't know the answer to. I remember walking out of church one day, and I asked my mom, whenever you walk into a Catholic church and walk out of a Catholic church, you dip your fingers in the holy water and you sign the cross over your body. And we were walking out after doing that, and I said, Mom, I asked the ultimate question to a parent. I said, what if there's not a God? And, you know, my mom must have been shocked to hear that come out of my mouth. And she gave the best answer she could, spur of the moment. You know, she said, well, even if he's not real, just think of all the people that are doing good, you know, through this life, where otherwise they wouldn't care. And if my son ever asks me that, I'll probably just tell him, don't ever say that again. There is, and that's just all there is to it. But, you know, it's just different people, and my mom was probably just trying to be open, you know, it was a really strange question for her, and but, you know, it was a real one for me, because I just wanted to know, what is all this for? And so then, you know, I grew up, became a teenager. I was a good kid for the most part. I did stuff that luckily I didn't get caught doing, or I would have gotten in trouble. I mean, that's the thing about life is, you know, a lot of people do things that aren't right, but the ones that get caught have to pay for it, and the ones that don't. I mean, I didn't have to pay as far as law. I never went to jail. There were things I did that I should have gone to jail. You know, nothing real terrible. I told Amy, you know, that I might tell a few jokes today, because I like to make people laugh. And some of my jokes aren't that great, so if you don't laugh, that's okay. But I was basically a good kid. You know, I didn't do anything really bad. I think I stole some beer one time. I got in trouble for it. But, you know, as far as, I'm not like a serial killer. In fact, breakfast food is my favorite meal, and I would never harm it.
I told him not to do it.
But I did.
I did not say it.
Okay, so fast forward, you know, I'm 19, I'm going to college, and I was going to college to be an accountant, and I was there with some high school friends, you know, just really had to set in that I was going to prepare for life, you know. I just was going to college, I was just extending high school. And I met a girl, and I ended up, you know, we ended up getting married, and I quit going to school. And things from there just kind of went downhill. We got divorced within, I think, a year and a half. We had a child, which is now a 21-year-old. We got divorced, but we went back and forth after that. We didn't just split. We got divorced, but then we still lived together on and off for the next almost 10 years. It was just really, I didn't know which way to go. You know, you hear so many people say, well, I came to a fork in the road, and I had to make a decision which way to go. Well, I didn't have a fork. I had several different directions I could go, but I was scared to make a move because I didn't know which way to go. I didn't know what would happen. So about 8 years into this, I was working at the diner with Roger, Sid's Diner, and I finally just got sick of just this cycle, you know, just going back to her, then us splitting up, and just back and forth every couple of years. So I just decided I was going to move out and get an apartment. And now she had 2 other kids, so we got 3 kids altogether, 2 step kids and then my son. So I basically just, you know, I told her what I was doing. I said, I'm going to move out and get an apartment. And I did that, and for the first few weeks it was fine. I kind of did what I wanted, and I just, you know, I was living for myself. I don't remember when I quit going to church. Amy was asking me that on the way up here. I don't really recall how old I was when I stopped going to Catholic church that my mom and dad got to. But I wasn't going to church. We had gone to church when we were married, off and on, different churches. I've heard the invitation more than 100 times. And although it was kind of tugging at me, I never said, oh, that's something I've got to do. I've got to do that. And it's meant for me. But I just kind of ignored it. And I remember they're laying there one night on my couch in my new apartment, looking at my big screen TV that I just got delivered about 3 days earlier. And that's back, it wasn't like this one. It was the big kind. Weighed like 300 pounds. And I was just laying there on the TV, and suddenly this feeling of just loneliness came over me. And I can't explain how it felt. It was horrible. The only way I can describe it is it felt like I was dying. Excuse me. From the inside out. Get the tissue just in case. And I just remember I was just lost. I was curled up and on my side. I didn't know what to ask for. I just remember praying, I didn't even know how to pray. I didn't know growing up Catholic, they have so many rituals, and, you say the Hail Mary for this and Our Father for this, which the Our Father is actually how Jesus told us to pray. But anyway, I just asked God for help. I said, I just need some help. And I felt like I felt like there was a 200-pound weight on my chest, and I couldn't breathe. It was pitiful. And I was just looking around I was thinking, well, maybe I need to turn on the TV to one of those religious channels. So I did. And it was okay. I didn't get any, I didn't feel anything from that. So I thought, well, I need to go to Walmart and get one of those self-help books. Maybe read one of those, and it could help me with my problems. What do I need to do to make myself successful, in life? And then I think I was at Walmart looking for the books, and it hit me. You need to get a Bible. And I went and bought a Bible. I started reading it. And then within the next few days, I was at work at the restaurant, and we had, we knew a lot of people that came in. It was a small restaurant. We got to know each other really well. The customers, would come in, they'd know us by name, and they'd talk to us, and they'd sit up at the counter right behind us and talk to us while we worked. And there was two customers that I remember real well. Alvin was a bus driver, and he also played Santa Claus at Christmas. And he had a helper. His name was Josh. And one day, after that night, it was within 3 or 4 days, he came up to me. I was working, and he came up to me and handed me a flyer. He said, "Hey, Jeff, you ought to come to this, to my church this Sunday. Josh Heupel's going to be there. He's going to," I can't remember if he said he's going to be giving his testimony. I think he just said he's going to be there. And my eyes lit up like the 4th of July. I was like, wow, really, Josh Heupel? Because I had watched him that whole year. And they were like 12-0. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go. So I took his flyer, and this would be the first time I'd gone to church in years. And I had a stack of magazines with me. And that was my purpose. I was going to get him to sign my magazines. That was the only reason I was going. I took the kids with me. Somehow that worked out. I can't remember how, but I took my son and my 2 stepkids with me. And I got into church, and it was standing room only. And I listened to his message, and everything else just melted away. I heard him say some of those words that I told you at first, keep your eyes on the cross. And sorry about this.
That's what testimonies do.
And after he was done talking, the pastor did the invitation. Maybe edit that. He did the invitation, and I was always a real shy person. So, one of the reasons I never took part in the altar call, I didn't want people staring at me. People saying, "Oh, look at that guy." But it just didn't matter. It's like I didn't even think about it. I just started walking up there, and the thought never crossed my mind, that people were looking at me. They didn't care. I just needed help. And the kids, they went with me. And even when I got up there, I still wasn't right. I remember walking up to one of the prayer partners, and his name was Bruce, and I think he was like the associate pastor. And I remember walking up to him and just telling him, "I need help." And he prayed with me. He took my hands and prayed with me. And after the invitation, they walk into a room and you talk to a prayer partner. And I remember sitting down with him, and he started talking to me, telling me about certain scriptures and Romans, and I remember saying to him, "My wife needs help," because I still called her my wife. But I said, "My wife needs help." And he said, "Well, we're not concerned with that right now, because she may or may not come to the Lord." And he said, "We need to focus on you." And he was trying to get through my thick head, that it doesn't matter about anybody else. You're the one that's making this decision. And so he talked to me and gave me some scripture to read, and from that moment on, my life was changed. I mean, some bad things happened after that, but, bad things will always happen, no matter bad things still happen today. But, you know, God can take what's bad and make it for your good. And that's exactly what happened. You know, fast forward a year, before we fast forward, let me rewind. Yeah. After that happened, I went to church the next week, and I went to the same church, and standing outside was the pastor of the church. His name was Mark Hartman, and I was walking to the front door, and he was out there greeting people. And I got to tell you, after that day, I never saw him out there greeting people as they were coming in again. But on this particular day, he shook my hand, and he said, "You made a decision last week." And I mean, there were dozens of people that walked up. So, I mean, that was God. He wouldn't have remembered me on his own. That was for me. That was like a sign for me that I was doing the right thing. So, after that, you know, I stayed in church. I was going all the time. An opportunity came up to, you know, they were asking for people to tell how the church had changed their lives. So I sent in a letter, you know, talking about my story. And Bruce, the guy that I walked to that day, when I got saved, he called me into his office one day. I can't remember how that went, but he basically wanted to share my testimony. He wanted to read it. And I said, yeah, that'd be great, especially since I wasn't going to have to read it. I was like, sweet. But he you know, it's a pretty good sized church. It's several thousand, you know, Council Road Baptist Church. It's a pretty big church, a lot of people there. I think they have 3 services. I mean, it's just busy, and there's a lot of people. I don't know that I could have done that, but he read it for me, and they flashed my picture up on the screen, you know, back when I had hair. But it was just, you know, I had some friends there. Josh was with me, the guy that handed me the flyer. I wanted him to be there. And they read my letter, and then after that, I was just flooded with people wanting me to get involved in church in different things. They wanted me to teach Sunday school, so I was a helper in the 5th grade Sunday school class, which I loved. I absolutely loved it. And then I did another guy. I went to a luncheon they had for new members, and this guy that was running the Royal Ambassadors, that's like the Boy Scouts of the church, he got with me and wanted me to help with that, so I did that. And I just got really involved, you know, I didn't ask to do anything. People just came to me and wanted me to get involved, and I was more than happy to. And I mean, my life was just really blessed from that day on. And, you know, for the next couple of years, I would continue to be involved and just be really active in the church and just following Jesus. You know. But then, you know, and I met my wife, Amy, Duncan. You know, I'd been away from that relationship, and it wasn't just my wife that was, or my wife at the time, that was not living right. It was me more than anything. We just didn't go together well. And I'd been alone for about a year, you know, and one of our customers at Sid's came in. Remember Gene, the fireman, captain? And he came in. He was a part of this church on Portland and I-40 called Faith Tabernacle. It was the week before Halloween. He said, hey Jeff, you ought to come to my church. They're putting on a little skit. You ought to come watch it. The drama team is putting on a skit. And he sang in the choir. And I told him, I said, yeah, y'all come. And it was a 5-night deal. So the first night went on. The next day, Gene came in and said, hey, did you make it to church last night? I said, no, sorry, I got busy. Second night came, did you make it to church? No, I'm sorry, man. Because, you know, I was involved in my own church, too. I wasn't just avoiding church, but I was, you know, you just let things get too busy and you can't do things that you say you're going to do. And on the last day of the drama, he says, Jeff, tonight's the last night, you going to come? And, you know, here I'm thinking, he's in the choir. He's going to see if I'm not there. So I told him, yes, I'll come tonight. So I took my son, and we went and watched this drama. And as I sat down, I looked to my right. She was sitting there with some of her family. And I remember looking at her and thinking, you know, that's the kind of girl I'd always wanted to ask out, but I was always afraid to because I thought I wasn't good enough. So I just kind of waited for the girls to ask me out. So I kind of got not the pick of the litter, you know, I just kind of got whatever's left. I never, before then, had ever asked a girl out on a date or anything. I just waited for them to come to me. So the pastor gets up and talks before the drama, and he says, you know, he talks a little bit, and he says, I want you to turn to the person next to you, take their hand, and ask them, are they sure they're going to heaven? So that was our first words to each other. And the answer was yes, of course, for both of us. And the drama, they went and showed the drama. And afterwards, she was walking away. She was leaving with her family. And I thought, something came over to me, and something came on me and said, if you don't talk to her, she's going to be gone forever. So I kind of went toward her. Hey, it was nice to meet you. It was nice to meet you. And she turned around and she goes, oh, yeah, it was nice to meet you, too. We sat there and talked for like an hour. And, in fact, her mom was with her, and after we were done talking, she told me that her mom said, did you go to school with him? Did you go to college with him? She said, no, I've never met him before in my life. And so, you know, I asked her if I could call her or, you know, whatever happened there. And she said, oh, yeah, look me up in the book. She wasn't too enthused about me calling her. At the time, God had to work a little bit on it. And she said, oh, yeah, just look me up in the book. You know, she had a real unusual name at the time. And she said, you can't miss it. So I called her a few days later, and I think I had to leave a message. And then she called back to the diner, and I wasn't working. I think Roger took the phone call, and my phone had been shut off. So Roger was making excuses for me.
You just said you didn't have a phone right now. That was
Yeah. But oh, okay. So you know, time goes by, and we get married. And, you know, we went through some struggles too, and we broke up. You know, after about a year dating, we broke up and dated other people, and found out that wasn't for us. You know, there's some bad people out there, and I think we found them. And it just made us. I think we had to go through that to understand what we had together. So we ended up getting back together, getting married, having 2 kids, and our life is just really blessed. You know, it's still got struggles, but it's just.
Our daughter's name.
Our daughter's name is Faith. We always said that once we had a girl, we would name her Faith after the church that we met at.
And we were married on the exact day.
The day that we met.
That we met.
October 30th.
was
October 30th.
Great.
That's our, and Roger married us.
That's right.
So
That's
it all works together for those that love God. That's when you know you're in His will, is if, not everything is going to work out perfectly, but it still works out. It's not, maybe not the way you want it to, or the way you expect, but it will work out.
Or when you want it to.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing I left out from my heathen days, and I was a heathen, is I remember having conversations at work. I worked at a place in El Reno called Dexter Axle. I think I worked for a while, both jobs at once. And I remember, talking to this guy that I worked with about God. I said, man, do you think God's real? Do you think He exists? And he said, I don't know. I said, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world. I don't know if there's a God. Why would He let this happen? And, that's kind of how I was. I kind of, from growing up in the church, I knew about God, but I didn't have a relationship with Him. And, I was angry. I considered myself, it was very strange because sometimes I would say, yeah, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. But then other times I'd get mad at Him. So how do you get mad at somebody you don't even believe in?
Yeah.
I remember one time I had just a miserable 20s era where I was just angry all the time. I remember I was outside changing a tire, and I had the four-way. I was down on my knees, had the four-way, get this lug nut loose, and popped up and hit me in the head. And I remember just raising my hand, giving him the bird. I said, that's for you. I was angry. He made that happen. And then I was angry at God a lot, yet I would tell people, nah, I don't believe in God. There is a God. And no matter what you do, He is always willing to take you back. Okay. So then we get married. We have our son, our 7-year-old son, Braylon. And, we're going to church. And, I don't want to say I turned my back on God, because I still believed Him. We still prayed. I wasn't living for God. For about close to 10 years, the next 10 years of my life. They were good. They were great. But I wasn't living for God. We'd go to church, but we would not serve at church. We kind of found things to do here and there. Like at Thanksgiving, we took a meal to somebody. Just little things like that. We didn't get involved at church. We go to big churches, so it's kind of easy not to get involved because you slip in and slip out, and they don't notice you. But this last year, we started going to our hometown church, which is First Baptist Newcastle, and they recently got a new pastor, and Amy was kind of following on Facebook the pastor's son's story. His name is Trey. And I find myself in a lot of these moments. Anyway, he had a rare disease. I couldn't even tell you what it was just off the top of my head, but
It was a form of leukemia.
It was a form of leukemia, very rare form. He had, I believe, altogether he had 3 bone marrow transplants, right? And
He was 7 years old.
he was 7 years old. He had a bone marrow transplant when he was a baby from his sister, and he did fine for 6 years. And then he started getting sick in the fall of his 6th year, and they had to take him down to Dallas to a hospital, and they had to do another bone marrow transplant. And I think they did another one from his sister,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it didn't take, and so they were doing a bone marrow drive, you know, to get tested to see if you were compatible. They were wanting to take bone marrow from somebody that wasn't related. So we went down there, and we got tested. We weren't a match, but somebody was. So they did another transplant. And by then, you know, right before this, I'd been starting to follow the story too. And he ended up passing away after he got the bone marrow transplant. He just couldn't, his body just rejected it. But I never met the boy. I'd met the pastor a couple times. You know, Newcastle Baptist it's not huge, but it's big. It's big enough to, if you wanted to, you could go by kind of unnoticed. You know, we know people in the church. We do physical therapy, home health, and so a lot of the old patients we had are members of the church, so people know us. But I just remember the day he passed away. I was doing some work on the computer, and we knew there was trouble because the pastor had posted on Facebook that he and his wife headed up to Dallas that morning, I think at 2 or 3 in the morning. And they got there, and they were posting, you know, that he wasn't doing very well. And well, he ended up passing away right at noon. That was hard.
It was life-changing for a lot of people in the community, but definitely for Jeff, it touched him like unbelievably. He's been different. I mean, he started following the story. I've been following it for several months because he'd been in the hospital almost a year. And Jeff had kind of gotten on board that it was totally life-changing for him. I mean, it really touched our life and our family, and I think that's what you're trying to get at, is that it's, no, thank you.
I remember one day Amy called me, my wife Amy called me. I was at work and I was driving in between patients, and he was still in the hospital, and she said, you know, she could tell by the tone of my voice, she said, something's wrong, what's wrong? I said, oh, I'm just a little sad. And she goes, well, what's wrong? Just tell me. I said, no. So I started crying. But I ended up telling her, I said, it's just this whole Trey story. I said, it just makes me so sad. And she said, you know, yeah, I know it's pretty heart-wrenching. And that was like a week before he passed away. And but watching the pastor and his family and their faith, they've got what, 3 other kids? 4 other kids. One of the older kids actually had the same thing, but he's doing fine. He's older. He's in his, I think he's 12 or 13. Mm-hmm. And you know, just we went to the homegoing celebration for Trey, and I can honestly say I've never been touched more from somebody I never knew.
Yeah, it was quite and he'd given his life to Jesus in
Yeah,
the hospital in
yeah.
January. He had given his life to Jesus.
As a 7-year-old, he was asking his mom, said, Mom, am I going to die? And she said, well, if you believe in Jesus, and you ask him into your heart, you never truly die. And so she led him to the Lord that night. And that was one of the things they talked about, when he went to be with Jesus. They were sad because he's no longer with them, but he is alive. And they will see him again.
I remember we had him on our prayer list.
Oh,
He
yeah.
emailed us.
Yeah. So, sometimes, like we said, sometimes things just don't work out the way you want them to. But it doesn't mean that God's not in control. He just wanted to use them for something else. So, that's what really started me back into getting involved. I realized I wasn't doing anything. I'd fallen back into my old living for me type of outlook. Just what do I need to do to make myself successful? And then, I started listening to the different Christian channels. Again, Kayla, Air One, I have a bunch of Christian music CDs. And I've also got a lot of secular stuff, we heard a little bit from AC/DC. I've got that on my iPod, I'm sure. I've got Motley Crue. I like all kinds of music. I've got Eazy-E. I've got anything from classical to rap to Christian. But it's what you listen to, what you meditate on, is going to change your life. And so I got this really cool stereo installed in my car. And I started listening to the stuff with some bass, because I had a subwoofer in my car now. I was like jamming, it was awesome. It was like boom, boom. And then, every once in a while, I'd switch back over to Air One or Kayla. And finally, I got to where I wasn't turning on my iPod anymore because it was hooked up to my car stereo. I was just listening to Air One, Kayla. And it really changed my whole persona. People that say they don't listen to the words in music, they may not realize they're listening to the words, but they are. You could tell when kids start singing the songs, And that's one of the things I want to talk about is Facebook. I was just like anybody else, on Facebook. I put on there some mindless rambling, just whatever I was feeling that moment. And then I started thinking, I could be using this for God. In this day and age, we've got so much technology. You can use it for good, you can use it for bad. And so I got signed up with this smartphone app called the Daily Bible, and every day you click on it, it gives you a verse, you copy it, and I post it to Facebook. And I wasn't getting a whole bunch of likes. People can tap the button and like it, or they can just ignore it, or they can block you. And I thought, well, a couple people are liking it. I don't care who likes it as long as they see it, because thousands of people can see your stuff on Facebook unless you have it, blocked. And so I just kept doing that every day. And sometimes if I didn't like what the verse was on the Bible app, I just find my own and copy and paste it. And I started getting people messaging me privately, thank you for posting scripture. Said it really reminds me of things that I've forgotten. Am I running over on time? What time is it? I've got, what, an hour more to share? Just kidding. Okay, so, and also, another thing I found through Facebook and you know, social media, there are a lot of people still lost out there. All you have to do, how many of you use Facebook? Pretty much everybody. And all you have to do to see what's going on in the world is go off of your normal page or what you normally look at. Click on one of the names that's in somebody else's, like a name you don't know, and see what they're talking about. I went on this, how many of you know Stryper, the band Stryper? Right. Roger, you know.
I remember.
You didn't see her either. You know them. They were an 80s and 90s glam, metal, Christian band. They got a lot of flack from not only secular people, the heavy metal people said, no, they're not hard. And then they get flack from churches saying they're not Christian enough. So they went secular for a while. And then they came back. They got together a few years ago, 2009. They put out like 6 albums since then. And this last one they put out, it's getting back to their roots. You know, they're talking about God. They're talking about the book of Revelation. I got on there. Oh, how I found out about Stryper is I was on Air One's Facebook page, just looking at posts, and some guy posted on there and said, why aren't you guys playing Stryper? They got a new album out. They've been back together since 2009. I thought, Stryper's still together? So I looked at their Facebook page, and I joined it, and I posted online. I said, man, Stryper's still up and running. I said, that's awesome. They're like 50. And if you haven't checked out the new Stryper album, check it out. No More Hell to Pay. And I was looking at some posts on, I can't remember if it was Stryper's Facebook page or another Christian Facebook page. And they were talking about Jesus coming back. And, you know, people just post whatever they want to post on there. They're not blocked or anything, which is fine. You know, it's freedom of speech. This one guy put on there, when he comes back, kill him again. I thought, wow. I thought, man, that's pretty bold to say something like that. But I didn't feel hate for the guy. I didn't say, oh man, that guy needs to die right now. I said, I used to be that guy. He's just lost. He doesn't even know what he's saying. He's letting the devil use him as an instrument. And, you know, I had another guy, I found another guy, this was on Stryper's page, and people talking about Jesus and God, and this guy got on there, he said, you naive people, said, quit believing in this God that doesn't exist. And I got on there and I said, it is futile to tell a believer in Jesus not to believe. And he never, you know, because it's true. You can't tell somebody that believes in Jesus, oh, he's fake. You know, if you know Jesus, you know Jesus. And you know he's not fake. Amen. But, so, I mean, I just, you know, do something. I've found that I just do little things and they lead to bigger things. Just try to change this world one person at a time. Because it starts with one. You know, a million starts with one. Infinity starts with one. And there's a lot of people going in their own direction. And God doesn't want anybody to be lost. He would be totally fine with everybody being saved. It's not the way it's going to be because there's just too many false religions and lost people in the world. But that's how he would like it. He has given us every opportunity to be saved. I mean, look in the Old Testament. The flood, you know, everything after that, he would make these laws that we couldn't follow. Adam and Eve, you know, they couldn't even stay away from the fruit. every time he would give us a way to be with him, we would go our own way. And then finally, I think he said, I've got to give them some way that they can do something to get back to me. So he gave us Jesus. And they're still rejecting the easiest thing you can do. Well, thank you. I think that's all I have. I could ramble on for hours. But I prayed that I wouldn't be able to ramble on. And I'd like to say just a little prayer. It's actually scripture. It's from Psalms, you know. May these words of my mouth and this meditation of my heart be pleasure, be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock, my redeemer. Thank you very much. Thank you, Roger, for allowing me to share it. Appreciate it.
I remember growing up in the church, Catholic church, and we'd have confession, and they would say, "Okay, go say this, go say that." And I remember going back and sitting down, and I was scared to death because I didn't know those prayers. I thought, I'm going to hell. I don't know what's going on. I don't know these prayers memorized. And I'm supposed to say these to be forgiven? I mean, as a little kid, I was scared.
Yeah.
I go sit there and I think, I'm sitting there with my rosary and I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to hell. Sad. But you know what? And then when we started going to church, Kelly and I started going to church, I started reading the Bible for myself. Got saved, started reading the Bible for myself. And I started thinking, this scripture says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. I don't have to go tell somebody my sin. I can go straight to God. And I started learning by reading the Word myself and getting into my Bible myself what it was really like. And now I say, today I say, back then I had a knowledge of God. I had a knowledge of God. I knew there was a God. I knew that. I remember seeing Jesus hanging on the cross every time I went to church. I knew he died. I didn't know why. I knew he died. So I know there's a God. I know Jesus died, and I had a knowledge of God. But when I got saved, now I got a personal relationship with God. Two major different things. A knowledge of God and a personal relationship. I want to ask everybody to stand, bow your heads, close your eyes. Cody, if you'll play that second song. Just play that second song. I want to give you an opportunity during this song, if you want to come forward and pray, if you have a need, maybe you're going through something today,